This week, Splunk goes shopping. ForeScout joins forces with an endpoint vendor. Carbon Black makes an announcement. ManageEngine has some new integrations. Microsoft is announcing some new security features. And ZoneFox launches a new UEBA platform in the cloud. Matt Alderman joins us for this episode, and our topic is how to secure your cloud services, aka SaaS offerings. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The teleprompter now has artificial intelligence, Doug, and updates itself. It's awesome. This week, and talk about them as it relates to enterprise security. You're going to do great.
I think that people think that you and I talk like every day at night. You know, It's like, hey, what are you doing? It's kind of a bit of an exhausting week. And I think that we noticed that a little bit in the stories for this week as well.
LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logRhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome, everyone, to episode 65 of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is October 11th, 2017. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian, joined on the lines via Skype by none other than Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome to the show today.
Always a pleasure, Paul.
Nice to have you. It's awesome talking about all the stuff with Matt, because a lot of it's conversations we've had a lot in the past, and we're just kind of updating them, which is great. Of course, if you work for an enterprise or any size business and you need training, itpro.tv/enterprise security is where you're going to go. You're going to get a discount code, which is ES30. You're going to try it free for 7 days and get 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. Of course, your employees have lots of training needs, and IT Pro TV has the solution. It costs a lot of money to send your employees to training, but you can do IT Pro TV's training anywhere, anytime, on pretty much any topic related to IT and IT security, even project management. So, and while I don't want to discourage people from taking training courses, it's nice to take a break every once in a while, but you can't have all your employees out at training all the time. So I love IT Pro TV for that reason, as it keeps you updated without having to travel. So make sure you check them out. In the enterprise security news for today, Matt, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, of course. As always, Splunk has made an acquisition of Rakana. Have you heard of Rakana before?
No, but it's not of Rakana. It's of Rakana's assets.
Oh, interesting.
So that should give everybody a clue that this wasn't a shopping spree. It was probably more like a fire sale.
Yes.
According to the article, they bought intellectual property and assets from Rakana and a number of employees, but it doesn't sound like the whole company, which typically means they ran out of money, they couldn't get any more, and Splunk picked up some of the pieces.
So you think the rest of the business is like done with for Rakana?
Well, if you look at the investment side of this, right, they took $4.4 million in a Series A in 2014. They took another $15 million in 2015, and now you have an asset sale. So that typically means Rakana as a company is done, no more money. And then Splunk came in and picked up the assets, some key employees, probably to integrate into the Splunk platform. So yeah, that's kind of how I read this one.
And it looked like some kind of analytics that they picked up, but it wasn't a whole lot of details as to exactly what they picked up.
No, yeah, it looked like it's an analytics platform, and therefore there must have been some intellectual property behind some of the analytics, some technology, and obviously some employees that had experience with that
Mhm.
intellectual property, and that's what it looks like Splunk ended up picking up. I've seen this before, right?
Mhm.
Qualys has done this a couple times with some asset purchases. They did one a month or so back where companies kind of out of money, time for fire sale kind of approach, pick up the assets, maybe pick up a few key employees and integrate it in. That's pretty much what I read out of this article.
Yeah, and obviously that's cheaper than what they could develop on their own, right?
Yeah, true. You look, there was $19.4 million put in this company. Must have been something there. Owler said $7 million of revenue. I'm not sure how accurate that was.
Yeah.
I don't know how many customers. So I don't even know how many customers Splunk picked up as part of this. Maybe none.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, like I said, it looked like a technology purchase.
Gotcha. In integrations news, ForeScout and CrowdStrike have formed a strategic alliance. Now, it's kind of interesting, Matt. I wanted to ask you this. It seems like there are a lot of companies in the so-called NAC market, but they don't want to call themselves NAC anymore, and they're trying to redefine themselves. But when you dig through it, I'm like, 8021X is like in their diagrams and stuff. I'm like, no, but you're still a NAC company.
Yeah, so ForeScout says they're the leading IoT security vendor, something like that. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're the leading NAC provider.
Mm.
IoT doesn't come into play unless it's running through your devices on your network, which not all IoT is, right? And so it's interesting. Yeah, they're kind of respinning themselves. Come on, ForeScout's a NAC, right? A NAC is a NAC is a NAC. It's looking at the network. It's identifying as devices come on. It puts some control stuff in place. And so this integration though makes sense for them.
Yeah, for a NAC
Between
vendor.
CrowdStrike and ForeScout. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
Yeah, right. So if they were an IoT vendor, then they probably should have done something else. But they're a NAC, and an endpoint make a lot of sense as an integration point.
I think the pivot on their messaging to IoT companies is kind of interesting because when I did NAC deployments way back in the day, or tried anyway, I mean, that technology is really hard. It has gotten better over time. However, the IoT devices were the most problematic, or at least one of the objections that you would get for people who had to adopt this technology. They would say, well, what about my printers? How do my printers get on the network? They can't run any kind of code or client to prove that they're secure to be on the network. And I don't know where all my printers are. They're everywhere. They're plugged into the network. Fingerprinting the printers is also problematic. In other words, the auto detection. I think that's some of the spin, right, into, oh, we're an IoT company because the NAC vendors have some technology where they can identify IoT devices because they had to. They had to say, oh, you're a printer, you're fine. However, there's lots of issues with that. If you probe a printer, bad things could happen. It could crash. It could spew pages. Also, if you say you want to whitelist a printer, if I want an attacker, I want to get on the network, I'm just going to impersonate the printer in order to get on the network. Now, they used to do it through MAC addresses, which was a management nightmare. Tell me what all the MAC addresses are of all of your printers. That's somewhat problematic. And then all I have to do is spoof that MAC address, and magically I'm on. Now, there was, back and forth if there's duplicate MACs, blah, 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 blah. But, that's kind of interesting. The IoT take on it was kind of a negative when they first came on the market.
Yeah, like I said, it's the cool term to use, but let's think about what the real definition of the Internet of Things are, and it's way more than printers.
Yeah.
It's all kinds of stuff, right? And we've talked about some interesting IoT vendors like Zingbox and a few others, which I think are truly in the IoT space, where they're trying to look at stuff all over the place. Look, NACs have a purpose on the enterprise network. They help identify when new devices come on, whether they meet a policy or not. And if they don't, then having an integration with some endpoint vendors like a CrowdStrike make a lot of sense, right? To help control that environment. But going out to the extreme of an IoT, I think is a little far fetched.
Yeah.
I noticed that in their messaging, because the first thing I did is I went to the website and went, oh, the rest of their stuff, as we've talked on this show and on Startup Security Weekly, look, they've kind of set their three power positions: see, control, and automate, I think, and have done some really good. But they do it in the context of network access control, which is right for them. I don't think that works for IoT as a whole, though. So, anyways.
So, Matt, the strategy is still, if something wants to get on my network, if it can prove to me, for example, that it's running CrowdStrike and it has the latest version of CrowdStrike and it's running configured properly, then it can come on the network and it goes into a separate kind of bubble, if you will. And then if it's not updated, there's some facility in which, well, you have to update your endpoint protection and get scanned to make sure you're not infected with something before you come on the network. Now, that sounds great in theory. Pulling that off on an enterprise that has even 20,000 users is very difficult.
Yeah, it's still difficult. And, look, it's more than just what's running. It's, do you have the latest patches installed? Are there any, critical vulnerabilities, et cetera, right? I mean, a lot of the work that we used to do, even back at Tenable together, was integration of some of our data with a ForeScout. That was a very important partnership.
Yeah.
So it's more than just, hey, do you have CrowdStrike running? There's a lot of other things that have to be validated and potentially updated on the box. And look, patch management and some of these software deployment issues are still not easy in large enterprises, but what they're trying to do is expand the ecosystem here to provide more checks and more validity before allowing full access to the network, which I think makes sense. Again, there's just a lot of steps in this process to make it seamless, which I don't know that anybody solved super well yet.
It's true. Yeah, because the other flip side of that is I'm on the network, I'm authenticated, then CrowdStrike finds that I'm doing something bad or running something bad, and it takes me off of that segment and puts me somewhere else. That's really cool,
right?
In a protection strategy.
Now I can isolate them, right? Exactly. It's protection side, which I think is a really interesting part of this. Is look, when something is going wrong, leverage the NAC to isolate the device off the network so it doesn't propagate and continue to allow the attack to propagate. So I think that's the really cool stuff if they can do it.
Yeah. Carbon Black, of course, is the other one of the major endpoint protection vendors. Points to predictive cloud security, which is kind of interesting.
Well, stating the obvious, look, we've been talking about predictive for a while, and so I didn't see anything really new here. Here's what I thought was interesting, which I don't agree with, by the way. They're like, so the predictive side I agree with, right? But they're saying, look, it's predictive, prevention, detection, response. No, it's not. Prevention hasn't worked for 20 years. Detection is still way too slow, and everybody's still trying to figure out response. Throwing predictive in front of it, I'm not quite sure solves the problem, right? I've been a big believer that predictive is part of an ongoing proactive protection capability that doesn't exist in the market very well today. But everybody keeps going back to, oh no, it's all about prevent, detect, respond. If prevent, detect, respond worked, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. So all they
Matt,
did is added this.
It's built on an extensible cloud scalable architecture that consolidates endpoint data in the cloud for analytics. I mean, what could go wrong?
Right. What could go wrong?
Oh, it's the devil's really in the details when we talk about a lot of these endpoint solutions. And I don't want to say they're bad. I mean, you may have Carbon Black deployed today, and it works really well. It's the positioning and messaging that starts coming out of these companies that throws up red flags. Like, what are you actually doing in your analytics that is going to help me in any phases of attack or prevent or response? Well, like, what exactly are you doing? And more importantly, now in today's market, what are you doing differently than anyone else?
Yeah, look, Carbon Black has a ton of data off the endpoint. So the ability to consolidate all that endpoint data into a big analytics platform to run AI against, okay, makes sense, right? Because they have the data. So can they extract some information out of there that says, look, when we see X, Y, and Z, we know this is an imminent attack. Let's do something to prevent it from happening or protect, right. Kind of proactively protect, right? And that makes sense. The proof here is in the details and how it gets rolled out. But just because you put a predictive analytics capability in front of prevent, detect, respond, I don't know provides much value. If I can take that data and do something proactively to protect my device, I don't care about all the steps that it has to go through. If we can get to that end state, then great. But that means they're probably going to have to add some capabilities to their endpoint agent, or they're going to have to integrate with some other folks that can apply rules or
Right.
some sort of protection mechanisms proactively to actually make it work.
Actually do something, which is the artificially intelligent component, is it can actually do something based on the data. The machine learning is looking at the data and finding interesting things, and then the AI would have to actually act upon that. And you're right, I don't think we've seen anything that really ties those two together and just works, because if it did, then we wouldn't have a lot of the issues we have today in the security community.
Right, exactly.
So we were talking just before the show, man, about ManageEngine, and I still can't figure out why they sound so familiar. I feel like I used them in a past life or something like that.
Maybe. ManageEngine kind of has a bunch of things, right? They say IT help desk, they do some remote control, they do some patching. I kind of see them almost like a IT service management help desk kind of solution, right? So probably competes a little bit with ServiceNow and Remedy and some of these other environments. But they do a lot of little things together, all kind of embedded in one platform. I know them because obviously with the work that I do for Automox, the patching portion of what ManageEngine does kind of overlaps a little bit with Automox.
Yeah, I've a lot more companies have come on my radar that do a particular component for Active Directory, and I always ask the question. So I have Active Directory from Microsoft, which is an amazing tool. Now it has its huge security issues, which I presented a talk this year, which I'll be giving again next month, largely focused on some of those issues. But if Microsoft made this tool, why don't they allow people to manage it better? And all of these other companies it's kind of the Apple model. Like Apple makes great products, but they let everyone else make the accessories for them. And the accessories that are made for them are, there's tons of them and lots of options, and some of them are really good. It seems like Microsoft has the same strategy for Active Directory. They don't provide enough management and control and reporting for Active Directory to help you manage it and then secure it, which ties very closely together.
Yeah. I thought we'd see more of that with Azure AD and the ability to control the directory, better. We haven't quite seen it yet. I think it will come though. There's another article here that talks about Microsoft in Azure with some more data protection stuff. And I think this is the evolution that continues to happen in the cloud security in the public cloud side, right, is more and more of these capabilities will be embedded into the different cloud services. So Azure AD would be the platform to kind of do some of that stuff with, and then see if any of it becomes backwards compatible into the on-premise. But look, enterprises that use AD want things integrated into AD because it provides them a mechanism to kind of pull everything together. But there's a lot of organizations that aren't using AD now. You've got a lot of hybridized environments where they don't even implement Active Directory in the environment. So this is where Jump Cloud and other solutions have kind of filled in the gap with a more kind of open directory approach to allow Linux and Macs and maybe some Windows devices to kind of interact together instead of everything going into AD. So although required in the enterprises, I'm not sure that every enterprise continues to roll out AD in the future, and therefore, what else do you need to do to protect the other directories and add some of these capabilities in?
Yeah, it's interesting. Microsoft has come out and basically with a focus on encrypting the data, protecting the data when it's used, and encrypting the data while it's being manipulated. And while that is a problem, I feel like they're very focused on the user data and not so much some of the fundamental issues with Active Directory. In other words, when you have tens and thousands of users, how do they share resources and authenticate? And those two things are severely broken, I will say, in Active Directory, in that it's too trusting. It's too much, let's just make it work, and not enough securing the access to resources, role-based access control, and authentication. And those are the things that attackers are picking on today. It's not even so much like, oh, the data at rest is not encrypted or whatever. Once you can manipulate the authentication mechanism, I can become a user, and then whatever data they have access to, whether it's encrypted or not, doesn't matter, because they're supposed to have access to it, so they're going to be able to decrypt it. So I think in that sense, their logic is somewhat flawed. I could be missing it, but.
Well, and I think part of this is the announcement on the data protection side is to combat what AWS did with S3 after the attack and some of the other stuff, right? Is to say, look, guys, don't worry, we're gonna protect the data in the cloud too, and some of this capability will backport into the server product. So hey, we're okay. Don't worry about your data in the cloud. That's how I kind of took this. It was kind of more of a me too from what Amazon had to do after some of the S3 issues. So. But I agree with you. The identity and the Active Directory stuff is probably a little more important, because once a user has access, some of the other protection mechanisms can get bypassed.
Have you heard of a company called ZoneFox? Not ZeroFox, because we talked about ZeroFox before. ZoneFox.
No, they're a Scottish company as well.
Interesting, huh?
It was. I'd never heard of them. They're out of Scotland, and they created this new hosted offering. And notice they said hosted offering, which I thought was a little interesting. Most people, when you think of hosted, you think of, hey, it's my instance hosted by somebody in the cloud. Where most other people talk about software as a service, which is a multi-tenant cloud, not a hosted solution. So the terminology was a little interesting here, but no, I had not heard of them before.
Now, they have a UEBA platform for basically the mid-market, and I think that's interesting. When I talk to organizations in the mid-market, however, UEBA rather, is not one of the top things that I put in their list as far as integration into their security architecture. I just don't think it's one of those things where everyone has to have it and it's going to help your security program tremendously. I think for larger enterprises, it becomes a very interesting component of your security architecture. It's not something that I would necessarily say, hey, the mid-market really needs this as one of their things that they can go to someone else and buy and have it hosted and managed and take advantage of.
Well, UEBA, as we've talked about before, I really think is kind of a subset. It's a feature of what the SIMs are doing, right? And so, you saw, who was it? ForcePoint make an acquisition of a UEBA vendor a few weeks back, right? And I think this is kind of that consolidation of the UEBAs that we thought we would start to see, right? As they were a feature, could they stand alone? And to your point, a UEBA at the mid-market is even a little further stretch than a UEBA at the enterprise market, where it should get look, mid-markets need help. There's no doubt about it. They don't have the resources that the enterprise have to do it. But I think for the mid-market, a more of an all-in-one approach where they can really leverage a single vendor to do more would make a lot more sense here, right? Instead of, hey, by the way, I'm gonna buy one of these and two of those and another one of these, and oh, by the way, ZoneFox or UEBA offering fits into my strategy of another point solution. I think it's too hard for them to manage a lot of these point solutions.
Yeah, it almost needs to be like a mid-market needs to go and get some identity and access management, and maybe as part of that, there's also a logging or SIM component, and then as part of that, there's the UBA stuff that goes along with it. And you're right. I mean, they're not going to buy all three of those point solutions and try and integrate them together. That's why solutions for the mid-market need to be more cohesive. They just want to go buy one thing that basically helps you manage your events with respect to users, helps you manage your users and roles and identity and access, and also monitors that for any anomalies, which is the UBA piece.
Yeah, the interesting part of what you just said is I haven't seen many of the IAM vendors go after the UEBAs yet, right? Because that's the other
There've been
place where they get tucked in.
There's been integrations,
right.
But you would think we'd see all-out acquisitions.
Yeah, because you think about the mid-market where I can do all the identity and access and all the user behavior analytics and bring all that together in a central solution is part of my identity solution seems to make sense, but no one's pulled a trigger there yet. We've seen it more on the security operation response guys saying, hey, UEBA fits into what we're doing around the SOC and some of the advanced SOC work, not really on the identity side. But putting it under identity actually would make sense to me. If any of those IAM vendors are listening, there might be a couple to go pick up and integrate into a much more holistic identity platform.
Yeah, because what I like is there is a set of user credentials that are behaving badly or become compromised. I can tell my IAM, hey, go disable those for now because they're acting bad. And I think that's really powerful.
Or force additional layers of authentication, right? So two-factor or whatever, multi-factor kind of stuff, right? So if you see the behavior, you can change the way the access is granted and how authentication happens. To me, that makes a lot of sense on the identity side, but we're not seeing that from the identity vendors right now.
With that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and Matt and I are going to talk about cloud security as it relates to your software as a service offerings. Stay tuned.